This podcast is brought to you by PodSpot Events.
Hello and welcome to the Bondi Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Beattie. The guest in this episode is Leah Simmons. Leah is the founder of KAAIAA, and if you don't know what KAAIAA is, listen to this episode and you'll find out. In this episode, we talk about Leah's life in the music industry in London, and she tells an amazing story about a crazy party that she attended in Ibiza. We then talk about Leah returning to Australia and pursuing a career as a Pilates instructor, and how her mindset evolved over time from purely focusing on physical health to a more broad focus on holistic health, including spirituality and mindset. And that's effectively how KAAIAA was born. If you like what you hear in this episode, I would encourage you to give Leah a follow on Instagram. Her handle is @IamLeahSimmons. Or better yet, I really encourage you to go along and check out one of our KAAIAA classes. They're amazing. I hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, remember to give us a follow on Instagram @The Bondi Podcast to stay up to date with all of our guests and episodes. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll find all of our episodes on Spotify. Cheers. Leah Simmons, welcome to the Bondi Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in for a chat. Look, let's start with our first question that we ask all of our guests. What is your favourite thing about Bondi?
It has to be the beach. It's plain and simple. The beach, the ocean, just the vibe down there. I mean, I've lived in Bondi on and off for my whole life, and it always feels like I'm coming home. So there's just this energy, and I hate using that word sometimes, but there really is, and there's nowhere else like it. I've been a lot of places. So, yeah, love it. Wouldn't live anywhere else.
Are you a morning beachgoer, afternoon, evening?
Well, I'm a morning person in that I like to get all of my training and all of that stuff out of the way early. But then, I'll often wander down there in the afternoon, a little bit of a dusk walk. There's always something going on, and it's a different landscape depending on what time of day you go, and there's loads of different things going on. So, yes, I love it.
Beautiful. And you say you've lived in Bondi sort of on and off your entire life?
Yes.
How have you seen it change over that time, I suppose?
Well, I think sort of architecturally it's changed. There's a lot more high-rise, those sort of big residential apartments, and there's a lot of globalization that's happened in Bondi, so lots of chain stores and, all that sort of stuff. But to be honest with you, the community, the sense of community down there has sort of remained the same. And one of my favourite times in Bondi is actually winter, when, it's quiet and it's sort of just locals only. It's really it's quite a villagey sort of vibe. Everybody knows everybody. And yeah, it's one of those places that I adore.
Has it ever had a nightlife, Leah?
Yes, it has. It has. There was a nightclub there called White Revolver that my friend actually used to run, and I think it had like a 3 a.m. license. I mean, the Bondi Hotel. Actually, interestingly enough, so when I first started DJing, and I know that we're going to get into this in a little while, but way back, it would have been 1999, and I was about a year in, and I got an opportunity to get DJ down at the Bondi Hotel, because it used to have, and I think they still do, but it used to be quite the place to go. And I remember walking in with my record box, and I'm like proper vinyl records, none of this electronic nonsense. And I went to find the manager, and I was like, "Oh, I'm Leah, I'm your DJ." And he literally looked at me straight in the face and was just like, "Oh, a female DJ?" And then he goes, "We must really be scraping the bottom of the barrel."
No.
Yeah. And I was like, So I went up there and I played the best set of my life.
Like angry, like
angry good.
Yeah.
I was like, "Fuck you.
Yeah.
Look how good I am." And then he offered me a residency.
After that night?
After that night. And I was like, "Yes, I'll play, but I'm now going to charge you double."
Oh, amazing. So how long was the residency at Bondi Hotel?
I was about 6 months, but then I ended up moving overseas. But Bondi did have a bit of a nightlife. It's it's totally changed from a late night destination to a very much like a dining place. There's lots of restaurants, you go there for dinner, but you certainly don't hang around to go and get loose or, go dance anywhere. There's nowhere. It used to be massive for like house parties because everybody lived, in close proximity to each other. So you'd go and then you'd end up at someone's
house on Pentonville Street or something like that. Yeah,
Yes.
Fair enough. All right. So you're just back from London, Leah?
I am.
Yeah. Was that business, pleasure?
It was business.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Most of my travel at the moment is for business, or unless I'm going to Bali to see my daughter, but I'm working when I go over there anyway. But yeah, it was freezing. It was -4. And I lived there for 7 years. I can't ever remember it being that cold. But it was work related. I did a lot of market research over there just to see what's going on in the world of health and wellness in a different place. We're just testing the water with a few different locations. So watch this space.
Beautiful. You mentioned, you touched on it there. You used to live in London.
Yes.
You moved there at 24?
I moved there at 24 in the year 2001.
Okay.
So you can do the math.
Oh, well, I'm not gonna do the math. I'm not gonna do the math. And that was like pursue a career in DJing?
So I had been DJing for a couple of years. I was working for a radio station in Sydney, a dance music radio station called Rhythm FM. And back then it was all, so what I think is known as FBI now, it's a radio station. We were all competing for the same frequency. So there was one radio license that was going to be given out, and there was 4 radio stations that were kind of vying for this license. We didn't end up getting it. FBI got it. Rest is history. But anyway, I was the marketing manager. I also had a radio show with my then boyfriend, who was like a big DJ back at the time in the time, and there was a competition that started called the Red Bull Music Academy, and it was in its first year. And somebody said to me, "Oh, you should enter." And I was like, okay. I had no idea what it was. And it was a global competition. It was open to, anybody and everybody. I think they had like 3,000 entries. 16 people got selected, and I was one of them. And the prize was to go to a global city for 2 weeks and be mentored by a whole bunch of amazing people in the industry, from like A&R through to the guy that invented the Moog synthesizer. Like, it was just this think tank of 2 weeks. And it was in New York. And 2 days before we were supposed to leave, September 11 happened. And so they moved it to London in December. And so I went to London. Now, I have a British passport. My father's English. I've got family over there. I went there for the 2-week workshop, had an amazing time, ended up extending for 4 weeks, stayed with one of the guys that I met there, one of the DJs. And I was like 24. I was like, this is the place where everything's happening. I'm moving here. You don't think, you just like, I had no dependence. I had nothing that was keeping me in Sydney. So I came home, and within about 2 months, I'd packed up everything, and I had no plan. I had no job, had nothing. I just went there, and I stayed with my friend for a couple of weeks until I got myself sorted. I ended up working in a clothing store for whatever, but then I sort of got to the end where I was like, oh, I'm running out of money. I don't know what I'm doing. And my manager at the time in Sydney said, oh, this job's come up with this record label. I think you should apply. I was like, I've never worked for a record label in my life. She's like, don't worry, you're Australian. They'll love you. So I went and had an interview with them, and I ended up getting the job and ran the biggest independent breakbeat label in the world at the time for 6 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But you're managing that label as well, but you were also DJing yourself at the time?
Yeah. So I was DJing a little bit here and there with them, but it was more, because they had some of the biggest DJs. We were touring around with them. I was managing the label stuff. We had, thank God there was no social media back then. That's all I can say.
Oh, geez, I can imagine.
But we had an absolute ball. It was amazing. I'm still friends with all of them to this day. But then when I I think I was about to turn 30, and what happened was because we relied heavily on vinyl sales, obviously back then and so we had a record store, we had a bar, and we had the record label. And when iTunes came in, it really shook up the music industry on the whole, and especially for independent record labels, because all of a sudden a song that you would have purchased for $18 or whatever in pounds, all of a sudden was 99 cents.
On iTunes, yeah.
You know, and not to mention that the distribution companies that had warehouses full of physical stock couldn't sell them anymore because it was just all about the download. Everything was turning into, it was going from analog into digital. So there was this real transition period of like a lot of record labels went under. It was really quite sad to see. But it was a moment in time for me where I kind of started to reevaluate what I was doing with my life. I was 30. I was living this kind of nightlife lifestyle. My younger sister was about to have her first baby in Australia. I was like, maybe I should go home and, see what the next thing is for me. And so I ended up moving back, and I was still in the music industry. I had a management company with a girlfriend of mine. We used to manage some overseas acts and Australian, but I was like, it sort of stopped being this really inspiring, fun thing for me, and I was like, it's just now becoming a bit of a drag. I think I need a bit of a career change. And every time I come back to Australia while I was overseas, my mum would always take me to her Pilates classes because she was like, you look like you've been living in a nightclub for
And you probably had been living in a nightclub.
Like, I have.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with Pilates. And this wasn't way before it was cool, let me tell you. This was like 2006. And it was sort of known as a method for, dancers. It was for rehab. It was this quite new thing to Australia. And but it just resonated with me and my body. And I was just like, I love this. And so I thought, when I moved back, what will I do? I went and did my studio certification in Pilates, and I ended up teaching in a studio for 8 years there. So that was my sort of foray into the fitness world, I suppose.
Look, Leah, you're not going to get off the hook that easily. You can't just brush over the 6 years in London hanging about with all these really cool DJs. I want some stories. I want some names. Did you, did you manage any big names? Did you play any big venues? Did you? Because I used to, go to all the big events back in the UK and Ibiza and things like that. I'm really interested in that sort of world in the early 2000s.
Yes, I did. Well, yes, I had a band over there. I was the lead singer in a band, and I played at Glastonbury in 2004.
On what stage?
On the Glade stage. And so there was about 25,000 people with my band. We never did anything or went anywhere, but that was an amazing experience for me. I can tell you a story about... So one of our artists actually submitted a song to a film, and the film was called It's All Gone Pete Tong. Do you know?
Yeah.
So
I know the movie.
You know the movie?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's about a DJ that goes deaf, and anyway, they had this incredible soundtrack that had all these different songs on it, and one of our songs got put on, and they wanted to do like a rap party, and so it was 2 people got to go from every label, and I was like, I was the only girl that worked in the office. I'm like, come on, take me.
Where was the rap party?
Well, so my boss and me, all we got told was to be at Heathrow Airport at a certain time, and so we turned up. We got loaded onto an aeroplane which they'd chartered, and on the plane was the cast, the crew, all the label people, the artists, Pete Tong.
Pete Tong, yeah, I was going to ask, is Pete Tong there?
He was there. They played the film on the plane, and so we landed. We took off. We didn't know where we were going. We landed in Ibiza.
Stop.
We got taken off the plane, put onto a bus. We got ferried up a mountain into this villa that was basically like carved into the side of the mountain. It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. I was just like, where are we? What is this place? And they just put on this epic party. And I found myself at some point of the night or morning, I don't know quite which it was, in a cave with Mike Skinner.
Oh, from the streets. I'm going to see him next month. I've got tickets to go and see him.
Talking absolute crap.
Yes.
So that was quite an amazing moment for me. And so then anyway, we we had the party. We all got put back onto the plane. As we were walking up the plane stairs, there was people there standing with a tray of bacon and egg rolls, and we all picked one up on because, need to eat. Back up onto the plane, back to Heathrow. And that was it. That was
just one day, just 24
one
hours.
Night, yeah.
Oh my God.
And that's when there was actually like a marketing budget.
Yeah.
For stuff and experiences and things. And so that sticks in my mind. I mean, it was a different time and I was a different person and it was a different life. I feel like I've had 9 lives.
Yeah, it sounds like it, Leah. It sounds like it, Leah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Where is he playing next month?
Hordern Pavilion.
Oh my God, I might have to go and see him and be like, hey, do you remember?
Yeah, do you remember that time when I beat up
in 2005?
the cave? Yeah. I don't think Mike remembers much of 2005, to be honest.
He was such an absolute legend, though. We had the best chats.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see him. That's amazing. Right, so you did that for 6 years, Leah.
Yes.
No wonder you got to the age of 30 and went, I might go back to Australia. So how soon after you came back to Australia did you said your mum used to take you to like Pilates classes every time that you would sort of come back. When you came back at the age of 30, did you just get right into it then?
No, there was a bit of a transition period. I worked for my dad for a little bit. I didn't know what I was really wanted to do. I didn't even know if I wanted to stay in Australia. And but circumstances and so started doing my Pilates training, and then I actually met a boy and I felt pregnant, and so was like, okay, well, I guess I'm staying in Australia now. And so look, I mean, things happen for a reason, and it was the beginning of a new chapter of my life that is continuing to evolve in real time as we sit here. And but yes, so that really started me on this, I guess, trajectory of, it started off as fitness. It's now evolved into health and wellness, I would say. There's still a fitness element, but it's not my singular focus anymore. But I had to have that experience, I think, and go through all the things that I went through to understand, for me, true health isn't just physical training. And, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard you speak elsewhere, Leah, about this concept of just being physically fit or looking physically fit doesn't necessarily equate to someone as healthy.
No, and look, I think you can say those words, but without having a lived experience of what that means for you, it's very hard to explain to somebody what that means. And when I was heavily into physical training, social media had just started, and I was quite an early adopter of Instagram, and my handle was Body by Leah Simmons, and it was all very much about the body and how you looked, and you'd sort of post it, and we had no idea of how it was all being received. We have an intention of what we think people are going to feel when they see something, but we obviously have no idea what's going on behind the surface. And the same goes the other way. So I would find myself, you take 100 photos to find that one photo. I'm actually speaking to myself. This is all things that I have done. I would engage in practices that probably were not deemed the healthiest to maintain the physique that people were expecting of me.
Can you touch on those things, Leah?
Yeah. So one of the most common things. So I guess we were the first influencers without it being called an influencer, right? That term hadn't actually been coined at that time, but in the industry, I was contributing to magazines and, a whole bunch of things. And one of the most common things that we get asked is, what's your day on a plate look like? Because obviously people want to know what you eat to maintain the physique that you have. And so I would, put a plate of food together. It'd be like eggs, it'd be whatever, spinach and tomato and sauerkraut and gluten-free bread. And I'd shoot it, post it. This is blah, 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 blah. I'd throw it in the bin. Like, I'm not eating that.
Why?
Because there were, I wouldn't say eating disorder, because I'm not going to take away the gravity of people that suffer with those sorts of things, but there was an unhealthy relationship with food. And so it was overtraining, it was under-eating, it was lying about it and basically saying, do all these things and whatever. But, there was a day, I think it came to a head when the cognitive dissonance of saying one thing and doing another just became way too much for me. And the way that it manifested for me was anger. So I was getting angry at people in my life. I was sort of disconnecting from my son. I was, and it was anger at myself for basically portraying a bunch of bullshit. And it got to the point where I can't live like this anymore. There has to be something that, and I think also I started getting angry at the industry for
Start to resent it.
I did. Look, nobody held a gun to my head to stay in it. Like, it wasn't like that. It was more just how can an industry it wasn't even the industry. I think social media at the beginning, it's such a snapshot of a bigger picture. And what we were doing was saying, if you look like this, then your life will be like this. And there's so much more to a life than just a body. And so all the other things that go into your life and you as a human, your thoughts, your emotions, your connections, your relationships with people, that all plays a part in your health, and it will all manifest in your body and how you look physically and how you feel. And so just sort of, putting together a 4-set circuit and going, there you go, there's your life sorted. It's just not enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me.
Yeah.
And I started to question what it meant to be fit, like truly fit.
So when were you asking yourself these kinds of questions, Leah?
So I started asking myself these kinds of questions when I met my second husband, who's now my ex-husband, but he lived in Bali, and I was going back and forth there because I was doing 2 weeks in Sydney with my son and then 2 weeks in Bali with him and then 2 weeks in Sydney. And I was
Timeline, Leah, when 20?
This would have been 2013, 2014. And I started dabbling in different modalities that were sort of blowing up over in Bali, like breath work, like meditation, like just concepts like limiting beliefs. And, I'd never heard anything like that before. We weren't talking about mental health as something that everybody had. It was a disorder that affected everybody else. Do you know what I mean? But we all have a level of mental health. It just depends whether you have, whether it's mental ill health or good health. And I don't think it was something that I ever took into account on my own health and wellness journey. But then coming out of those practices, the change I felt in my mood and consistently, I was like, oh my God, it was such a wake-up call to because what happens is you do those practices, you continue to do those practices, and it translates into better choices in your life. So you feel good, you want to eat well. You feel good, you want to train well. You feel good, you sleep better. Like all these things are connected. And I just started feeling on one hand, I felt so much better in myself, but on the other hand, I was like, oh my God, I really need to redefine and reframe my relationship with fitness, and I need to share it as well, because for so long I realized that I've been putting out this image of me which isn't real, and that actually culminated in me shaving my head, because it was like I needed a physical representation of leaving that version of me behind and stepping into a new space and being completely laid bare and raw, and, there's nowhere to hide anymore. It's like, this is it. And if you don't like it, that's not my problem. And so it was more doing things for me and my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health, and that has been the theme, I think, of that moment and beyond. So yes.
Can you remember the light bulb moment?
There's no light bulb moment. It's a gradual realization that, it starts as a feeling. You just get this, I don't know, when something's feeling not right in you. You can feel it in your gut. You get a lump in your throat. And I think it was just that was happening more often. And also my training started to suffer. So I was starting to plateau with my physical training, because obviously I'm stressed, and you're releasing all these stress hormones, and it's just nothing's working. And I think it was like I got to a point where I was like, something has to change. And my husband was like, you're so angry all the time. Why are you so angry? Like, what's going on? And he was like, I can't deal with this anymore. And I think there was like I'm pushing away everything that's good in my life, simply because I don't have the courage to be honest to myself and then honest with the world. And so I think that was probably the light bulb moment where I was like, right, I need to make change. Making the decision to make change is one thing. Doing the steps, taking the steps to make that change, because, it's not instant, and it's not linear either. So there's 2 steps forwards, 3 steps back. There's questioning all the time. It's hard. That's why they call it work. You're working on yourself. It's not a holiday. There was a lot of hard truths to confront. There was a lot of pain, and it's just one of those things that you have to accept, that there's light and there's dark and there's shadow parts of yourself, but it's all beautiful and it's all part of you, and nobody's perfect, and we are perfect in our imperfection, and it's what makes life so nuanced and enjoyable, I think, are those moments. And it also makes the good times so much better, because you're grateful for everything that you have, and being able to feel all of those things.
Yeah, 100%. So, Leah, when your husband's coming to you and it's saying, like, look, Leah, you've got all this anger pent up, and it's showing up in really unhealthy ways in our relationship. How did you go about fixing that initially? Like, what was
we did?
Did this prompt the move to Bali? Because you lived in Bali for a little bit, or were
yes,
you doing stuff
So I was pretty much living there ish. I was still doing the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Had I had our daughter yet? No, we went through quite a full-on, I guess, healing process. We tried a lot of different things.
It's a very healing place.
It is it can be. It can also be quite a dark place. There's, I guess, where there is light, there is always dark, and there are always going to be people to exploit or take advantage of a movement, or in any industry. You'd be completely naive to think that the industry of spirituality is is not a commoditized or commercial venture, because it is, right? People make money from it. People peddle a lot of stuff. There are a lot of...
It sounds like you've had some experience there,
Yes.
Leah, come across some shady characters in your time.
Absolutely. You know, but then it's up to you, I guess, as an individual to just whatever resonates with you. It's not, there's no right or wrong per se, but I think that if somebody's intention is not in the right place, then in that industry it can be quite damaging, because somebody that's coming to somebody with proper pain and proper expectations. It's not like, oh, I bought a pen and it doesn't work. It's like you've gone into the depths of my soul and you've like muddied the water or whatever it is. So I think that, you know, there's a duty of care
With those practitioners.
100%. Yeah. But I was very lucky that I found some incredible people that have had a huge impact in my life, and you know, I will continue to be grateful to them. But I had moments where we did some work and, you know, I was like paralyzed from the waist down for...
What were you doing?
We were doing it was just a regression session with one of my spiritual... I would say she was probably my spiritual teacher. She introduced me to Kundalini yoga. And she actually made me want to go and train in the modality because it was so powerful for me. You know, it's funny when I look back on that part of my life, because if I look at who I am now and what my belief systems are, it's a little bit, I've come back to the center quite a lot. I went
too far one way.
I went all the way down there. And then I've kind of come back and found, you know, my level, what I'm comfortable with and what I actually believe in. And this is the other thing is, you know, when you're in that vulnerable state, it's really easy to be influenced by what's going on around you and people, and especially if they have very powerful energies, you can, because it's new to you, you second guess yourself, and somebody tells you something as a statement of fact, you believe it. You know, you start to take on that narrative and you start to believe all those things. So I'm very careful in my delivery of anything that I say and my interactions with people, not to tell them absolutes. I don't know you or your past, or, you know, I don't know anything. I always I guess preface it by saying this is something that has worked for me. I can speak from my experience. If it resonates with you in any way, let's unpack that. If you want to go there, I'll go there with you. But I certainly do not purport that anything is the way, or there's one way, or, you know, I just don't believe it. I really don't. I think that I think even the way that we speak about different concepts, you can have the concept of prayer, right? Is so different for everybody. The concept of God, the concept of energy, the concept of faith. And I think we need to be mindful of this polarizing view that there is one, you know, absolute way or definition of any of this sort of stuff. It's all an interpretation. It's all it is. It's and my interpretation of healing, I guess, is going, you know, is very personal, and it's about the person going in and just being like radically honest with themselves in that moment. And you know, so it's funny talking about the experiences that I've had, and I look, whether they did anything, helped me, they got me to here, and that's all I can. I guess that's all I can sort of say.
Yeah. And like you're probably thankful for all the experience. You're probably thankful for actually going way too far.
100% wouldn't change. I would not change a thing. I have no regrets with any of it, like none. Because you're right, I'd be in a completely different place, space. I would be sitting here with you.
I know, right? In the Bondi Bowling Club. What modalities did you sort of focus on when you were in Bali to sort of help, or
so
did you try out what did you find?
We tried everything.
Yeah. I mean, I was there last week. I was there last week and had a little bit of healing to do, and I did fitness, breath work, meditation, acupuncture, just threw myself right into
And that's what you do, right? If
Yeah.
you're going to go, you go.
Mm.
Like, we're not doing anything by halves. We did a whole lot of different things, but the things that landed for me in a meaningful way that I can now kind of practically apply to my life and what I've put into KAAIAA is breath work, meditation, and then what I sort of refer to as mindset training, but it's actually a technique that I learned from Kundalini, which is it's and you know what's actually funny is if you look at it in a fitness term, it's an isometric hold. Okay, much like a plank or something like that. If you look at it in Kundalini, it's this kind of transcendent moment. Whatever it is for you, for me, it was simply pushing past the perceived limits that I had created for myself in a safe moment of discomfort. And I had such a massive realization that there is such a huge difference between I can't do something and I don't want to do something. And that was my aha moment, I think, for me. And I think also that resonates for a lot of people because when you realize that you are the thing that's standing in your own way, and it's easy to say that, but if you go, okay, well, give me some context. How many times have we been in a tough situation or been presented with something that somebody wants us to do and we go, I can't do that. You can do that. You just don't want to do that, right? And then you need to start going, well, hang on a second. Why don't I want to do it? And what starts to come up are a whole bunch of emotions. It's scary. It's the unknown. It's X, Y, Z, all these things. And that can open up and you can start to become curious around what are the driving forces behind my fear? What is, what am I actually afraid of happening? Because when you say I can't, you shut it down and there's no further room for discussion. It's like nah. When you say I don't want to, it opens up a plethora of questions around, well, hang on a second, why? And I see the penny drop for people when I use that in class, especially people that have never done KAAIAA before. And they actually go, fuck, you're so right. And what I also realized was that the space in between those two statements, so the I can't and I don't want to, is where your kind of untapped potential exists. Because it could be from, you might tap out of something so early and you've got this whole runway of potential and, that you've just closed the door. And then I'm like, okay, imagine if in any moment of your life when you have to face something hard or challenging or uncomfortable, if you just let yourself take that step into that kind of unknown space, because more often than not, it's just about the unknown. And we love to be in control of an outcome, or we love to know what's on the other side of that. And we never can, And if you want to live your life like that, then it's just going to be quite safe and, same. And you never get to experience the full complement of what you can actually manifest for yourself. And so the armhole at the end was my secret sauce, I think. And that was the thing that had the most profound impact on me. But I also, I loved how I felt after breath work. I think that incredible focus, delivery of oxygen and disrupting the normal breath pattern and understanding how shit we are at breathing and being able to actually, feed ourselves, feed our brains, feed our cells for free, by the way, every day was, a revelation. And then the bodywork component. So I'm just, I love feeling strong. I love looking strong. I don't think that I should have to not feel like that as I enter into, middle age. So there was that. And then meditation has always been a go-to for me to just feel a bit centered and calm and know that at any given moment, if I'm in a spiral, I can always come back to that. Am I okay? And, the answer is always yes. So so those are the things that really, I guess, resonated with me to the point where I was like, I need to be able to share this stuff with people. And so I went and, did my various trainings to be able to do just that.
And that's where KAAIAA was born?
That is where KAAIAA was born. Well, KAAIAA was actually born from, I guess, more of a practical need as by this stage I was pretty much a single parent because, my husband and I separated just sort of after I launched KAAIAA, but it was born from, I've got 2 kids. I'm a busy person. I don't want to spend my whole entire day going from an hour Pilates class into a half an hour meditation into a separate breathwork session and once again, I was a DJ. My job was to mash up stuff.
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's in your blood, yeah.
I just couldn't comprehend this idea that, you have to do all these things in isolation. Why? Just because someone was like, you're not allowed to pull this apart and pick out a part. I'm like, get fucked. I'm going to do that. Like, why can't I just pull out the best part of that? Why can't I just do a 4-minute meditation? Why can't I just pick out the arm hold from a Kriya in Kundalini? That's what I want to do. And that's what works for me. And I just wanted a workout that I could do in under an hour that ticked all of those boxes. And when we were, when I was sort of coming up with it, I actually realized that what I was doing was satisfying the 4, I guess you'd say, pillars of health. So mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. So breath work for mental, it's opening up those neural pathways, it's getting the oxygen into the brain, it's improving your focus. You've got your physical pillar, which is the body work, the emotional pillar. So the meditation aspect of it is really just bringing you into that space of centeredness and alignment. And then you've got the spiritual pillar, which for me is all about connection and how connected you are to yourself and your ability and your greatness and your vibrance and your radiance and your potential and all that sort of stuff. And that was the arm hold. And I was like, oh, I've actually done this, a truly what I would call holistic workout, because it's a workout.
100%.
You did it.
Yeah, I did it on Sunday and I was knackered after it. Yeah. Yeah. I actually love that you start with the breathwork, Leah. And the idea behind the breathwork, I think you said during the session, was to like get into our bodies, out of our heads and into our bodies. Is that right?
Yeah. So absolutely. It's really quite difficult to get distracted whilst you're doing breath work. So you're very present, you are very in your body. The breath work that I choose, the techniques that I use in KAAIAA are all active because it's supposed to be an internal warm-up. So you're warming yourself up from the inside to then prepare for the bodywork component. I've done Wim Hof. I've met Wim Hof. I've done all of that stuff. I've needed techniques that we could do for sort of 4 to 6 minutes. You could be sitting up doing it, that you weren't going to go off into a kind of another dimension. So it's really just this, it activates your nervous system and it's bringing you into the present moment. And that's really what the breathwork part of it is designed to do, plus that beautiful oxygen delivery.
Well, I thought it was brilliant. Before we got into the body work, after we did the breath work, I just felt like I did feel really in my body. Now, I've done yoga for years and years and years, and the amount of times I've done a yoga class where I've been doing all the actions, doing the flow, my brain has been like, it's not in the room. And I'm now, after doing that session with you on Sunday, I was like, fuck, if I had done this before, all of those yoga sessions, I reckon I would have been more in flow, more in tune with my body through the session. I just thought it was a great way to start the session.
Thank you.
Yeah, it worked. It does work. Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. Yeah. So KAAIAA then, so you've had this, you've had this idea, you developed this program. Was it when you were in Bali at the time?
So it was actually quite funny. I'd been working on a program called the Elevate Method, and it was still the 4 components, but I hadn't nailed the final piece. I actually, before I came back to Australia, it was, have you heard of heart math? So I can see you're wearing a Whoop, right? I wear a Whoop as well. I just had it off. And what it measures is your HRV. So Heart Math was the first company that actually brought attention to your HRV, and they had this thing called an inner balance trainer, and you put it on your finger, and it had another thing and it taught you how to bring your heart rate variability into what's called cohesion, because that's what you're doing. It's the space between the heartbeats, and you want to get that into a rhythmic, consistent, cohesive wave. And so after that was actually what I had at the end. And then we decided that because we spent 2020 in Bali. So the first year of COVID, we were actually in Bali.
What was that like?
Oh, it was great. Because at the time, my husband, he owned a beach club. And
which one?
It was called Tropicola. He had a big a hospitality group, and we ended up running this beach club. And when COVID happened, all of the businesses shut down, and we had no income, and we had no place to live because we were building a villa, but obviously had to stop building. And so we were like, oh my God, let's just move into the beach club. That's a whole other story. But we moved into the beach club, so we had this epic 2-pool, I don't want to tell too many people that because I know that people's experience of COVID and lockdown was terrible. Ours was okay.
This is the safe space, Leah.
Okay.
This is a safe space.
Okay. Anyway, but towards the end of the year, we decided that we were going to come back to Australia to visit our families because my dad got sick, and then his dad got sick, and we hadn't seen and my son hadn't seen his dad in a year because my son was with us. And so we went, and we had to do the 2-week quarantine, and it was me and Adrian, and then I had my kids, so Ryder and Lucky, who would have been 2 at the time. And again, everyone was like, oh my God, how was the quarantine? I was like, we had the best time. It was so funny. We'd have the mental health people ringing us every day because they do the check-in, and we were like, this is great. And they're like, are you actually sure you're okay? Like, there's no drugs up there. Have you smuggled anything in? We're like, no. I don't know why. We ended up really enjoying our 2-week kind of, immersion together. But my point is that it was whilst I was in quarantine that I floated the idea and played with the idea of the arm hold and tested it out on, my husband, and blew his head off and loved it and whatever. So when we got back to Australia, I'd never taught a KAAIAA class in its current format in front of anybody, to anyone. All I had was my own experience and the fact that I thought it was logical and I thought it might work. And I rang my friend Kate Kendall, who owns Flow Athletic in Paddington, and I've known her for years. And I said, listen, I've got this method. Would you be up for me teaching a couple of classes in the studio? And she's like, yeah, babe, of course. Whatever you're doing, I'm loving it. So came down and put a few sessions on, and it just started taking off. And then I was like, because we were only supposed to be there for a month just to visit, I said to Adrian, I think I'm wanting to stay for a bit. He was like, okay. So we sort of stayed, and by March, I said I want to look for my own space, and we found that beautiful space that we had on Gould Street. It was above a shop that was run by one of my divine friend Jay, and it was a community space. So it worked out so well because I didn't have to take a lease or anything. We just used and so that kind of became the unofficial home of KAAIAA, and it just started gaining momentum. 3 months, and then
lockdown number 2. Oh,
lockdown, no. Yeah. So, which was, soul destroying in a way, but obviously makes you pivot and you have to adapt to the situation. And so that was when I sort of pivoted to online, and I I stupidly, having never, me being me, I was just like, yeah, I'll do this. I said to my community, well, okay, look, I don't want to stop your practice because I think it's really important, especially now that we're all going to be in isolation. It's really important that we keep up our practices. And so I'll do like a free Zoom class every morning.
At what time?
It was 7. And I'd never turned Zoom on in my life, by the way. I was like fumbling around in the dark, but I got it going. And I said in public, I'll do a free Zoom class every day for the duration of the lockdown, thinking that it would go for 2 weeks.
It was like 3 months, wasn't it?
Yes. I did 78 days straight.
Good on you, Leah.
By the end of it, I was getting 700 people a day.
700 people dialing in.
All over the world into the Zoom class, because it wasn't just about first of all, something you have to know about me, I'm a diehard 80s music loser.
I can see it in your eyes.
Loser. And so I would open with the daggiest 80s song I could find, and I would lip sync and dance.
Give me an example here.
Oh man, I mean, just take your pick: Madonna, Flashdance, freaking Mike and the Mechanics, like Fame, I don't know, whatever it was.
Love it.
And there's me, because what it did was, first of all, it allowed people time to get onto the Zoom. It also literally made them all giggle at me, like, look at this fool. If she's doing that in front of 700 people, I don't feel so bad about myself right now. So it brought us into this kind of level playing field, and it actually united all these people that had no idea who they were in this shared experience of so there was that. And then there was the class, which was always great. But then after the class, because, no one's going anywhere, I'd sit there for 2 hours and we'd chat and we'd get to know everybody. And some people never ever turned their video on, but they were there. I had 16 pages of Zoom, but I actually got to know, and they got to know each other. In this incredible experience. And what actually happened was Burning Man, one of the girls Burning Man had to be canned because obviously of the lockdown, but they pivoted to, they did an online burn, and they had this virtual player of, all the different camps. And one of the girls that would come to the KAAIAA classes was actually, she ran this thing called the Sparkle Verse, which was a multiverse of the online burn, whatever. And she said, oh my God, I really think that you should do like a Camp KAAIAA. I'm going to put it to...
At this virtual Burning Man?
At this virtual Burning
No
Man.
way.
And I was like, yes, let's do it. And so we had 10 days to organize this thing. We built this crazy random platform in the online burn. And I just threw it out to everybody on the Zoom. I was like, right, I want to have a 24-hour timetable of just whatever you've got for me. And the response was bananas. We had cooking classes, we had yoga, we had breath work, we had DJs, we had blah, blah, and we were the most attended camp in the whole of the online burn for 2021.
Amazing.
We made the Sunday Times in the UK. We were just this place that people would wander into online and just see this epic bunch of humans doing whatever it was that they were doing. It was so good.
Surely you got an invite to the actual Burning Man the year after, Leah.
No, I didn't.
I need to make that happen.
I know. I don't know. It's funny. Actually, I miss it. I know that's a terrible thing to say because lockdown.
You miss the lockdowns?
Crappy. But I miss that community, that sort of togetherness. And that was where KAAIAA actually, I kind of grew this amazing community online. And when we came out of the lockdown, unfortunately the space that we were in got released to somebody else. So I had to sort of stay. I created this whole online platform. So that was where that has taken us up to now. Yeah.
Wow. How did it feel, Leah? Because obviously you're waking up every day and you're, just flick on your computer and you've got 700 people tuned in to you. then when the lockdowns sort of finish, that sort of captive audience sort of goes away a bit,
Yeah,
I suppose.
I
How did that
know. It was a
sort of
come
feel?
down, man. It was a come down.
Yeah. And how did you get over that?
No, look, I nurtured my community. You know, it wasn't like everybody disappeared. They just fitted into their lives where they could. I was still running live classes on my own platform. I realized also that, I couldn't give away everything for free all the time.
No.
So I needed to try and monetize it and build a business around it. And so there was a lot of work that went into creating, the good thing was that I'd proven the concept. So we'd proven the product,
And you fine-tuned it as well. You
and
had
we
that opportunity
fine-tuned
to
it 100%. And most people, they don't know, they don't get the opportunity to prove a concept without it being in market. We did. Yeah. We were like, there's no question that this works. There's no question that there's demand. We just now need to know what our route to market is. We need to know what that market penetration is. And fuck, Chris, that has been the hardest thing over the last 2 years to understand. And it's been the most humbling experience, I suppose, coming down from that high of like, oh, everybody loves it and they'll all stay with me, blah, blah. The minute physical spaces reopened, people no one wanted to turn Zoom on again. People were just like, online fitness, fuck that.
I'm going to go and
I want to go back and
Yeah.
be in a real space with real people and, get out of my, and fair enough. I think that is 100%. What it has done is offered people a choice. I think that a lot of fitness offerings and health and wellness would never have thought to go online. And so the 2 years of, the COVID thing, I guess, gave people a lot of opportunity to create content and explore what a digital offering would look like. And so we now have so many different options around how we train, where we train, when we train. And I think it's great. But I do think that the market is heavily saturated, and especially in Australia, where we are competing for such a tiny little piece of the pie. And look, the fact that I'm still here as a startup, I think is a miracle and good.
Yeah, good on you. So what would be the sort of the key learnings, Leah, then over the last 2 years as you've tried to get that, get to market strategy, as you've tried to sort of implement that or find the correct route for you?
Your route to market is everything. Everything. You can have the most noble why in the world. It means nothing if you don't have a route to market. If you don't have a route to market, you don't have a business. It's as simple as that. You have to know your customer, who are you talking to, and how are you getting it out there. And I think that, one of my business partners has taught me a lot over the last couple of years, and we have watched platform overtake product now in the world. So you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have the platform to be able to share it in a meaningful way, then it goes nowhere.
And by platform, Leah, do you mean like followers on Instagram?
No, I mean what platform are you? Is it physical? Is it digital? Is it? And then within those platforms, you've got market monopoly. So if you don't have proper capital behind you or a lot of money to spend on Instagram ads, where are you going?
You get drowned out.
Where are you going? And so they've made it so hard for the little guy to get any traction anymore because they just block you. It's as in they block who sees you, and unless you pay to play or unless so it's become a really you have to be very creative around how you kind of get the word out. And I think also cultivating a loyal, engaged local community, word of mouth is going to be your biggest asset, especially nowadays when
Everyone's down staring at the
everyone's
phone.
there. So print media is gone. Nobody looks at the billboard. Like it's nigh on impossible to start a business these days, and have it scale in any meaningful way. And so I've learned a lot of lessons. Route to market, super important. And even in, and this is the thing. So like you can be as spiritual as you want, but logic prevails in business. You need to have half a clue around what those practices are.
Yeah, Leah at the very edge of the spiritual journey probably wouldn't be saying that.
Like the universe will just look after it. It'll just self-organize itself. Like you'll self-organize into oblivion. There needs to be some logic. Show me a roadmap. And I'm now I am so a step person. And if something confuses me or it doesn't feel right or I don't understand something, it stops. And I'm like, okay, no, I've got some questions. How do we move forward? Explain to me what this, and so I've become quite, I need to know, I need to be able to see the way forward before I go forward. And it doesn't mean I need to see an outcome. I just need to see what the next step is. I've put too much time and work and effort into the brand building and the community engagement and the product to go all the way down a wrong path. So it's proceed with caution, but take risks
at the same
while
time.
You're going. Yes.
So Leah, I did my first KAAIAA class on Sunday and absolutely loved it. What does KAAIAA look like today? And if people want to, give it a go.
So currently we have an on-demand platform. It's all online. There's like 180 workouts up on the platform, which you can do at any time. We are also about to launch into some studios. I've just run my first teacher training because this is the other thing. Like up until, a couple of months ago, I was the only person that was teaching it. How on earth does it scale if it's literally tied to me? So I had to create a way to be able to train trainers to teach KAAIAA in other places. And I also, have to, I want it to be bigger than me. I want to see it in studios all over the world. I want all of that. And so this is the year that it is going to expand beyond just me. And so we've got some amazing studios on board, which it will be launched into, not taught by me, but taught by some amazing humans. And we've got a lot of exciting things in the works. I'm heading to the States in March to go to a big conference over there called IRSA. We're going to do some exhibition classes in LA and New York. So yes, watch this space.
That's amazing, Leah. No, good luck with all that. So you've actually been teaching teachers?
Mm-hmm.
How many have you taught?
We had 18 at our first teacher training.
Wow.
14 of them were actually connected to studios that we're going into. And then we had 5 teachers that were just sort of freelance instructors. The criteria is that they are existing either yoga, Pilates or PTs, that they have to have taught group fitness classes for at least a year. It's even though the modalities themselves seem, they're easy to learn and teach, a lot of it comes down to self-expression. And you would have experienced on Sunday, especially during the arm hold, none of that is scripted. I'm not reading from a script. It's coming from a place inside me, which I think can scare people a little bit because, first of all, they're like, oh, I could never teach it like you. Well, I don't want you to be me, right? Don't try and do it like me. Yeah. You got to do it like you, and that will come out as beautiful and authentic and, and then don't overthink it. Like pick a theme and then let people have their experience. Doesn't matter if there's a bit of silence. The soundtrack is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a few 80s tunes. Yeah, it should be all right.
Yeah.
Leah, I've got 2 more questions this evening. The first is the word KAAIAA. What does it actually mean?
So KAAIAA is a word taken from a language called Gurumukhi, which is from Kundalini yoga. And it means body or self. And it's quite an interesting story because I looked at the word, I loved the word, I loved the meaning. I then put the word up into capitals just to see what it would look like. And I saw those 4 A's that looked like little mountains or little pillars. And I was like, oh my God, the 4 pillars of health. That's really interesting. And then I was like, oh, they're sitting around an eye. So you've got 2 on each side, which is like this beautiful, nurturing little cocoon. And then I was like, I wonder what would happen if we took the A's away, and you take the A's away and you're left with K-I, and K-I is chi, which is energy. So there was just this multi-layer kind of, which I didn't even intend for, but that's what KAAIAA is. And also it means that I'm number 1 on the Google search because there's nothing else that's called it.
Which is important, as we know.
Totally.
And then, look, final question for me this evening. What words of advice would you give to that version of Leah that put a lot of pressure on herself to look a certain way? That version of Leah that was taking pictures of food and putting in the bin. What would you tell her today?
I just have loads of compassion for her. I really do. I look back on that person, and because I know how the story ends, or not ends, but how the story's going, I just, have faith in her. And she, like so many people out there, put way too much pressure on herself to meet some ridiculous standard that nobody was expecting from her. We are our harshest, toughest critics. No one else is looking at us like that. Most people look at you and think you're absolutely amazing and doing the best that you can, So I think just don't be so hard on yourself. You got this.
I think we're all doing the best we can. Look, Leah, that's a beautiful place to leave it. Good luck with KAAIAA.
Thank you.
I really mean that. All the best for this year. And
Thanks
thank you for coming in for a chat.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
Thanks, Leah. Cheers.